back to the DFS Premier League show brought to you by VIP-bet.com. I'm your host, Kevin DeVries. Joining me in that window over there is my good friend and partner in crime, Rob Langevin. Rob, this week on the slate, we have some really big heavy hitters. You have Manchester City, you have Tottenham, you have Arsenal, you have Chelsea. None of them in particularly rough matchups. I think for me, this slate just screams out for stars and scrubs. Is that how you're looking at it as well? Or are you going to try to have more of a balanced lineup this week to fit as many of them in as possible?
Yeah, the thing that screams out most to me is I think this is one of the weeks where if you're one lineup player only, this is not probably the slate for you. I think this is a multiple slate, multiple entry this week, because I think there's so many separate stacks that you can go with. You could basically go with a Chelsea stack. You can go with a Man City stack. You can go with a Tottenham stack. And then if you're believing so much in the Arsenal, in what they have, that you can have an Arsenal stack. And then you can also, basically divide and conquer, doing mini stacks with Chelsea, City, and then basically any combination of that, But there's so many big name possibilities in every one of these big teams: Chelsea, Man City, Tottenham, and Arsenal. They're all facing opponents that they basically can run roughshod over and possibly get 2 to 3 goals against that opponent. I'm not a big proponent of doing multiple stacks and trying to monopolize against yourself, because then you're playing against yourself and you're limiting your odds on basically hitting on one lineup and then not hitting on the others. Yeah. So basically, the best idea, I think the best advice I'm having this week is basically narrow the big 4 games, the big 4 teams this week. Pick 2 guys from each team that you think you like. See how their salaries match up with the other 3 other games, and then piece it together. Have one guy from each game, and then enter your lineup that way. I wouldn't say do multiple stacks, but I'm saying get entry points into every attack, so you have viability for goals and the accumulation of better points.
Yeah, if you're doing one team, you should have at least one representative from each of them. But feel free to go 4 different lineups, 4 different stacks, and
go
just
crazy.
See the way it goes.
It's only money.
It is.
Money can't take it with you.
But you can't make money without spending money is something somebody said one time, even though there's kind of inherent flaws in that. But
he probably had a lot of money. That's
a good point. That's where it was coming from. He was coming from a place of being rich. He was like, I started rich and then I stayed rich. It's so easy. And you're like, oh,
and then he played DFS a lot and got richer.
There it is. Probably listened to our show. No, it probably didn't exist yet. All right, we'll jump right into these matches. I'll start off talking about West Ham versus Burnley. In this one, I'd been on the Robbie Brady train for a long time. Really hasn't been panning out the past few weeks. So I'm going to mix things up a little bit and go defensively here with Stephen Ward, who's only 4,500. I know we've talked about this before, Rob, but I want to hear all the players that have more key passes than Stephen Ward. All of them.
Yes.
All the players with more. Get ready. It's going to be a long list. Alexis Aguero, KDB. No, that's it. Oh, no. It really wasn't that long a list at all, as it turns out. He's a defender that has as many, or has key passes more than everyone else in the Premier League other than those 3. It's just absolutely bonkers that he's done that. The fact that he and Burnley have kept 3 clean sheets in the last 5 matches, obviously beneficial as well. He's just going to be a really good option this week up against the West Ham team, who just have not been firing in goals of late, not that high up in chances created. Arguably, you could say the best options for West Ham are their defenders as well. I know you and I both fans of Aaron Cresswell, who just randomly decided to have a skip year last year and has picked up where he was the year before. My dislike here is going to be Chicharito. Again, that's back-to-back for him. He has 37 points in the last 5 matches, which isn't bad, but 20 of them came in 1 match. So he basically has 17 stretched out over 5, which is not good, because that's around an average of 4. So you don't really like that at all. The odds that he scores 1 this week, not particularly high against Burnley, who have the 3rd best defense. The odds that he scores multiples, pretty low, especially considering the big names we've already mentioned on this slate. And you aren't even really saving that much money. I mean, 6,800 isn't in the same price range as Batshuayi and Kane and those guys, but it isn't really cheap enough to be tempting. Like if he had kind of like Shaqiri had a huge price plummet this week just because of matchup. If Chicharito had plummeted down into the 5s, then you'd be like, oh, well maybe it's a contrarian thing, but he didn't drop enough to make him worth that for me. So at 6,800, I'm off the Chicharito train. I think this is a profoundly boring match. I could see it being 0-0. Oh, that's what I'll go with, but it could go 1-0 either way.
Yeah, I like your Stephen Ward, tout for fantasy defenders. He's probably in the top three conversation of most useful fantasy defenders this year throughout the season. I'd probably have to say Davis and Cesar Azpilicueta are probably in the argument for top three, with Azpilicueta's assists and Davis's all-around ability. This game, like you said, is not going to be a boon to multiple goals. Chicharito at his price, I'd rather tread down and have Andy Carroll at 5,900 if you're looking for a West Ham striker. There's not many punt options on this week's slate for strikers, and Andy Carroll is basically the cliff at 5,900. I think if you're going beyond him, I think you're reaching and hoping and praying. But even Andy Carroll is not a good dart to throw.
Yeah.
He's not a good dart to throw, and you need 180 to get to triple you out. So I wouldn't go that route. I think it's probably boring, but I think both teams get on the tally. It's probably going to end up 1-1.
Still would be boring though. don't get it
completely.
twisted.
Completely.
On to you and your mighty Blues. Good news that Hazard is back in the lineup. Bad news, Alvaro Morata likely to miss. Although weirdly some murmurs of potentially good things. Maybe could make it the bench. Maybe back by next week. Who are you looking to target in this one?
Yeah, this game is for Chelsea is a kind of a. You could pick your target now, like as soon as you're watching this podcast, if you want to, or this stream, you're watching it live, you want to rewatch it again, cool. But when this Chelsea team, when they set their lineup, is basically when you're going to want to attack who they put in.
Yeah.
They're going to have so many different changing parts this week. I think that there's 3 or 4 guys that you're not used to seeing start on a regular basis, probably start. I think Pedro may get a start. I think Rudiger may get a start. David Luiz is back now, so he's in contention. Cahill may sit from what I'm hearing now because of the Champions League game on midweek. And then you have Batshuayi taking over from Morata. There's no N'Golo Kante, who got injured in the international break. So this is more like you can pick the names you like right now and be favorable towards them, but just don't get drawn into falling in love with them. Yeah, don't get married to them and fall in love with their price tag, because if the lineup changes, you may not have enough time to shift around. But the guys I like, you got to like Bakayoko. I think he's knocked on for N'Golo Kante at 3,700. He's probably going to slide into that defensive midfield role for Chelsea. And there's plenty of assets there, because the Palace likes to give up goals in multiples, which leads me to my other Chelsea because there's 2. Because you got to love Batshuayi at 7,800. If I mentioned 5,900 for Andy Carroll, I think Batshuayi at 7,800 is the midway point between Harry Kane and Andy Carroll. But I think he's probably the best entry point into the Chelsea scoring thing. I don't think you could trust Hazard to go crazy and score multiples. I could trust Batshuayi going against a Crystal Palace team that has given up multiple goals in 7 of their 9 games or 8 games.
The league's worst defense.
So, and my dislikes. This is funny, Kevin. If I said to you that the highest point for a Palace player this year was 22 points, who would you guess it would be?
Oh no, this is going to be some dumb trick thing like Jeffrey Schlupp or some nonsense.
It's crazy. Palace hasn't won and they haven't scored. So
Who was it?
It's Wayne Hennessy. He scored 22 points in the match against
with
Liverpool.
The saves,
because he had nine saves.
Yeah.
And they lost the game and he let in a goal and he had 22 points.
It's
the highest point total for a Crystal Palace player this year by 9 points. 9 points.
Townsend?
In DFS.
Maybe?
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I think the next highest one is I think Joel Ward had like 14
he scored
11 crosses in one game. Yeah, but it's crazy. But anyway, so avoid Crystal Palace players, basically what I'm saying. There's just nothing there to earn yourself into the money. Chelsea's going to walk this game. It's going to be 3-4-0.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to say Palace could score here, because any team can score at any time, but them losing Benteke, it is not about to get better soon at Crystal Palace. I'll say, oh man, 3-0 is kind. I'll go with 3-0, but it could easily be much, much worse than that for Roy Hodgson and his new team. I'll carry on into Stoke versus Manchester City. Again, whispers that Sergio Aguero could have a late fitness test. Doubt he starts, but he did rejoin light training this week, which, considering he was supposed to be out for a month plus, we were hearing 6 weeks, and now it's been 2 or 3, and he's already lightly doing stuff, is genuinely kind of crazy. But for this one, I'm going to go down to the midfield position, and a lot of people probably would assume that I was going to be talking about David Silva. I talk about him a lot on other forums. And while I do like him, this isn't exactly his best format. As we know, DraftKings tends to lean a little bit towards wingers because crosses have more value, shots have more value. So somebody like Silva, who sits a little bit further back and creates, not as beneficial. Obviously, he's had very good matches. But for me, I'm going to go with Raheem Sterling, who actually has more points over the last 5 matches over Silva, largely because of the shots and goals that he's notched in those weeks. The fact that people still have questions about Sterling's minutes, because a lot of people still think there's a Sterling-Sane split. There's really not. Sterling definitely gets the start over Sane when it comes down to a 1-to-1. When Sane is starting, usually Sterling is already also starting. So you can,
in the team.
Yeah, exactly. So you can take advantage of that because people will obviously see that Sterling is available on match day, but the people that make their lineups early and just kind of leave them tend to shy away from Sterling because they're concerned he may not get the start. So Sterling has been starting consistently, so I'm ready to roll with him. Multiple double-digit point weeks of late. And then if he does miss, you can just downgrade to Silva anyway. But I think Sterling is a better differential option, and as I said, has been better point-wise in DFS of late. Also, he's going up against one of the best defenses in the league, literally tied for being the best defense in the league, are Manchester City. But Xherdan Shaqiri, always worth a shout. Kind of name-dropped him earlier when talking about how Chicharito didn't take a price drop. Shaqiri was 8,300 the last show we did, and he's now down to 6,600. The stats are still great. Only player with top 5 shots on target and chances created. And he doesn't have to score or assist to pick up his points. The last 2 matches where he didn't score or assist, he still had 10-plus points just because of all those crosses and shots. So Shaqiri, super low price. If you're willing to roster somebody that is probably not going to score a goal, Shaqiri is pretty much the top of that list. Admittedly, you don't have to go to that list very often. So for my dislike, is pretty much every other Stoke player. No Stoke player this season has more than 2 goals. None of them. 0. That is not the best at all. And going up against the best defense in the league, probably not the week they're going to turn that around. If you want to use Choupo-Moting as your punt, as your midfielder, because he actually plays as a forward as an OP play, fine if you want. I wouldn't advise it, but, part of the glory of DFS is that you can just throw crap at a wall and every once in a while it'll stick. Not to complain too much about the format, but how many times do you see the winning team and you're like, that just wasn't a good team? Like, it is just as easy to be right and not win as it is to win and not be right, which can be frustrating at times. But, so if in your heart of hearts you like Choupo-Moting, you want to roll those dice, feel free. Just know that City's defense are really good. I'm going to say maybe City don't keep the clean sheet, but I'll say City win 3-1.
Wow. Yeah, I think City definitely keep this clean. I don't think Stoke has anything. I don't think Stoke has anything on the attack. We've seen it when they played Chelsea. I think his game is going to be very similar to that. There are so many City options to choose from. I think Gabriel Jesus, David Silva, Kevin De Bruyne. Whether or not Leroy Sané starts or sits, David Silva. And then you have the City defenders who are a little overpriced, a little high-priced, but they don't give you the return as much. Maybe Otamendi gets a goal. John Stones has got some goals previously, but kind of lying in the weeds. I think this game there's going to be one midfielder for City. I think that is a differential. I think they're going to steal percentages from each other. I think Silva, Kevin De Bruyne probably kind of weigh each other out. I like your tout for Raheem Sterling. Stoke is going to get scored upon, and I don't think they're all going to come from Jesus, De Bruyne, or another player. I think Sterling could sneak in there and get a goal. So one of the City midfielders for me is going to be an actual an ownership differential. Just that we won't know the lineups. We start seeing the slate actually start to play. I think City walk this 3-4-0, just like Chelsea. I think this game is going to have some goals scored by multiple people, and it's good for DFS because it spreads the wealth around.
Yeah, and we heard today no Bruno Martins Indy or Ryan Shawcross for Stoke, who continue to struggle defensively. We had spoken off air that it was likely Jeff Cameron was going to be moved up into midfield to replace Joe Allen. With both of those other center backs, he's probably going to have to play in defense, which means Charlie Adam, who I don't think has played a minute this season thus far, may have to come in rusty against this Manchester City team with the most goals scored and the fewest goals conceded. It could get sloppy.
It could get ugly.
Yeah.
Could get ugly.
Yeah, it really could. To you, with a match less likely to get ugly, Huddersfield versus Swansea. Huddersfield, after a hot start, cooling down a little bit. Swansea only had one player that is really high profile. That's Renato Sanchez. He's missing this match. Do you have any expectation from this one, or with how many big matches are surrounding it, are you just kind of shying away on the whole?
Yeah, you know what I look at this game is, in every college person's career, they have to fill their semester out with like a basket weaving. This is the basket weaving.
This is your gen ed
of this week. Huddersfield versus Swansea does not offer that much intrigue. Their team scores a lot of goals. They don't really facilitate a lot. There's not a lot of cross play. There's no real yes, this is my guy kind of game. This is the kind of team. Both of these teams are basically, I need a defender that fits between price A and price B. So basically between 3,500 to 4,500, you're basically looking for a defender that you have extra cash on, that you're looking to fill out the rest of your roster, so you can have pieces from, like I said before, Chelsea, City, Spurs, and Arsenal. Two guys, I'll just throw them out there. I don't really love them because I don't think I'm picking anybody from this match. But besides maybe a goalie, you could pick a goalie. Jonas Lossell at 4,300 is an interesting buy. But defensively, Tommy Smith, 4,000, and Norton is pretty cheap at 4,100. He gives you enough decent return that he'll be able to give you some value there. He's definitely not going to be owned as much as he normally is, because I think people are going to be looking at the Chelsea, the City, the Tottenham, and the Arsenal defenders here to weigh down their roster. For dislikes, basically anyone that doesn't fit into your roster because you have too much money to spend on every other team. This game is going to be this game looks like it's heading for zeros to me. That's just me.
Yeah, I think if Steve Mounier passes his late fitness test, which is looking on the optimistic side, he could be interesting. But even then, I mean, Alfie Mawson is one of the better young defenders in the league. I think it's overlooked a lot because of Swansea's inherent struggles, but could be able to contain him. I agree with you. This is going to be a low-scoring one. With no Sanchez, I mean, Swansea have the fewest chances created this year, and I'm pretty sure Renato Sanchez was the one leading them in that category, even though he got a late start. Man, I just don't know where the attack is supposed to come from. And Huddersfield have had a pretty decent defense thus far this season. I'm going to say Huddersfield nick one from somewhere, 1-0 Huddersfield, but just as easily could be 0-0.
Yeah, on an interesting note, Swansea has yet to keep a clean sheet at home, so keep that in mind.
Yeah, so that kind of ties in with that as well. Hey, look, good news, back to a big club. Whew, man, it's been too long. We were talking about Swansea and Huddersfield. Here, a lot of times we try to find like clever side plays. This is not that. This is just Harry Kane, dead in center, leading the league in goals, shots, and shots on target over the last 5 matches. Shots, obviously, the statistic here that really boosts, considering that is a direct-to-point metric here in DraftKings. As for the matchup against Bournemouth, there are hardly better ones. Kane is facing a bottom 10 defense here in Bournemouth, and also has scored 6 goals and notched an assist in his last 3 matches against Bournemouth. He just is a cherry killer. Just basically every pre-match Eddie Howe sets him up, and then Kane just knocks him right back down. 11.5 is very, very expensive, and I think it's entirely worth it. He's going to score. I'm willing to go on record. He's going to score 2+, or at least contribute to 2+ goals. How about that? Like, it could be a goal and an assist, but I think it'll be 2 goals. Or better. He just continues to do it. And he's done that against Bournemouth defenses that I personally think were better the last 2 seasons than this one. So
that's a good call.
Yeah, so even though he's expensive, as we used to say in the very early stages of this show last season, just because somebody has a low price doesn't mean they're a good value, and just because somebody has a high price doesn't mean they're not a good value. And for Harry Kane, I think it's the latter, that even though he's expensive, maybe he's worth it. Maybe he's Maybelline. My dislike is going to be Dele Alli at 8,200. The underlying stats have not been there all season. Did have that 2 assist game, but to the eye test, he wasn't even that good in that match. He's been failing the eye test heavily. Did not look particularly great for England. Was only able to play the one match because of a suspension in the first one. That's another thing that isn't that rare for Dele Alli, unfortunately. Bournemouth have as we mentioned, not the best defense, but there are probably 5 other Tottenham players I'd rather have this week. And Dele Alli has scored in single digits 3 of the last 5. So it's I'm just not leaning that way. And for those playing at home, rather have Kane, rather have Eriksen. If Son played, would rather have Son. And I'd rather have whichever right back starts. I think it's going to be Trippier. Trippier. Keep mixing it up with Sergio Aurier. And Ben Davis, who has just been lunatic on fire. I think Ben Davis is one of the 5 best point per game players this season. And, as a defender, you don't expect him to have too high a price. 6,000, obviously very high for a defender. Not very high for a random player. I even considered using Ben Davis as my util just to highlight how much I think he could have a really good week. I don't know if he's in the team I'm going to share, but he did end up in one of them. I think Tottenham, unfortunately, just undo Bournemouth here. Also, sneaky Davinson Sanchez. He's playing every week. I feel like people aren't really paying attention. He's a big dude. If he got his head onto something, I'm pretty sure he'd find the back of the net. Not sure if that'll happen, though. I'm going to go with Tottenham. Man, it's been a lot of 3 and 4 nils in this lineup, and also a lot of 3 and 4 nils when Tottenham play Bournemouth. I'll go 3-0 to be nice and conservative.
Yeah, this is a defense. I think if you pick a defender from a slate, I think Tottenham is the one team to take one from, because I think they do enough getting forward that it won't kill you for their price. They're one of the teams that, defensively, if you want to spend up for a defender, they're, with Aurier if he plays, Trippier, however you said it before, and obviously Davis. Tottenham is a team to definitely spend on defense, because they don't leave you, dancing alone at the prom, because they definitely give you a good return. Bournemouth just doesn't do anything for me defensively. I know we both love Charlie Daniels in most formats and most games, but not this one. I think he's on his heels most of the game and pretty much saps his value. So yeah, Tottenham's going to walk this, I think, again. I know walk it is a big thing this week, but they're definitely going to score multiples. But I don't think Bournemouth even come close to hitting the goal. So yeah. I'd say Tottenham 2-0. I'm going to say 2-0, because this way it's not 3-0 for everything.
That's nice. Also, just while I was thinking about it, I didn't explain why I think Trippier starts. It's that I don't think Pochettino wants to play Trippier against Cristiano Ronaldo. I think you can be a lot more confident in somebody as physically gifted as Sergio Aurier is. On the other hand, the last time there was a midweek match, Ben Davis was rested, and they kind of flirted with having Heung-min Son play as a wing back, which I'm not a fan of. But who they substituted in the second half was Kyle Walker-Peters, who started the first match against Newcastle. Kyle Walker-Peters, if he started at 3,700, would be a heinous steal as a member of this defense, which, as you mentioned, should be a very good selection this week. So just kind of keep your ear to the ground on that one. We will wrap up here with Arsenal versus Watford. Another big versus little, but Watford have been pretty good this season when they've been at home.
Yeah, Watford does play spirited ball when they're in front of their home supporters. But my loves for this game, I'll have 2 of them, only because with the injuries to the Arsenal defense, I think they're pretty much limited to who you want to pick there, and you basically want to go for the cheapest entry point, and that's Rob Holding at 3,100. You basically want the cheapest entry point on a decent defense with a decent enough match where you could probably monopolize on getting points, so you can invest it otherwise. That's what DFS is all about: stealing Peter's money to pay Paul, or stealing Paul's money to stay Peter. Either way, see, I said it backwards, but I fixed it post tense. But it doesn't really matter, because you're saving money regardless. My other like is Alex Iwobi. I like guys that are playing in a good form. He scored before the international break for club, and then he went on international break and scored for country. So he's playing some spirited ball at 5,100. He could be the sneaky entry point into the Arsenal attack that you want with the prices of Alexis Sanchez and Lacazette. They're not really guys you want to really invest in, because I think Alexis Sanchez is going to be very, very invested in this slate, because of, I think, people making multiple lineups, like I said before, and basically you not being able to have Sanchez, Kane, and somebody else from City available in your lineup. So basically I think that there's going to be neutralizing lineups of Alexis Sanchez and pieces with Harry Kane in pieces and Chelsea guys in pieces. So, but Gunning is my dislike. It's Lacazette. I think that they're between the other strikers on the slate. I would choose Harry Kane over him. I choose Batshuayi over him. I think I choose Gabriel Jesus over him. And they're all basically similarly priced or a little bit more money, but I'd rather invest them more money, because I think those games have the ability to get them multiples instead of having Lacazette probably get one, because Watford defense is nothing really to sneeze at when you look at them as a whole. They do play spirited ball at home, like we said before. I think Arsenal are the better team here, but the game's not going to be a goal fest like the other big teams. I think it's 2-1 Arsenal.
I can back that scoreline. And Lacazette, this may seem harsh, is just a super rich man's Defoe. If he isn't scoring, he really isn't doing much from a DFS standpoint. Agree with you. Think Watford will get on the board, even though, as you mentioned, Rob Holding is a good cheap option. But Watford have been scoring a fair bit this year, top 10 in the category thus far this season. So yeah, I can agree with 2-1. But I think of all the big clubs versus little clubs, Arsenal have the most difficult one of them, and I think largely it's because Watford have actually been pretty good this season.
Yeah.
All right, you have a team prepared to share with us?
Yeah. We'll start at the top. Since the format's flipped, I'll start with my forwards. I have Harry Kane and Michy Batshuayi on top, 11,500 for Harry, Batshuayi 7,800. Seems like no-brainers to get the strikers and the talismans for both Spurs and Chelsea. Through the midfield, I have Gabriel Jesus because he does qualify there. So basically, I have 3 forwards. I'm basically giving you my all selling out for goals lineup here.
Yep.
I have Gabriel Jesus as my one midfielder, and then I'm punting down to Bakayoko at 3,700. I think he's going to do enough in that role, and Chelsea are going to have enough chances for him to be creative and maybe back into an assist that I think he'll be a boon to my fantasy. So on defense, I went cheap. I went Rob Holding at 3,100 and Jose Font at 3,000. I like both their games for them as a defensive metric. I think they'll do enough getting forward and do enough possibly to get a clean sheet. So there's that possibility. In goal, I have Joe Hart. I'm kind of rolling the dice with a clean sheet with Joe Hart. They've had 4 of their last 5 with clean sheets. Love Joe Hart this week. Kevin's laughing because I've just mentioned him all over the place.
Yep, you're the leader of his fan club. You and his family are really high on Joe Hart this week.
There's literally only 3 goalies I think I'd play this week. Joe Hart is one. I think Jonas Lossel is the other at 4,300, and I think the other one is Aurelio Gomes at 4,000. I think those are the 3 goalies that I would actually pinpoint in on this week. So if you have to pick, they're all basically cheaper than everybody else, so above them. So that makes no sense. But just listen to me, I made sense. In my util, I went Alex Iwobi at 5,100. So basically, if you think about my lineup, I have a Spurs attacker, Chelsea attacker, Man City attacker, and an Arsenal attacker. Granted, they all play and start. So, and I do have a 1,500 in the bank left. So, nice. if things do change, I can mix it up.
That's awesome. In mine, first of all, confession for the people that have seen this screen and have wondered why, when Rob mentioned some people, they weren't showing up in the player list. That's because that screen was half of the screen I'm showing you now. So some of those players were in my team, and so it removes them from the player pool. So if you're like, go. That's what was happening there. Here is my team of the week with Harry Kane up front. I threw Richarlison in here at 6K up against Arsenal. If Watford score, you can pretty much bet Richarlison is going to be involved. He's top 5 in total points thus far this season in DraftKings.
So sneaky good.
And it's just good. 6K. It's honestly crazy. I think it's just because people think Watford are boring, but as we said earlier, they've been having a really good season thus far. Just waiting for people.
They're like Burnley sneaky.
Yeah,
and Burnley's been excellent as well.
Right. Just one day, the people setting the prices are going to wake up and be like, "Oh, they're good," and like all these prices are going to skyrocket. So get them while you can. Richarlison scoring double digits in so many of his recent matches. My City covers Raheem Sterling, who I mentioned. Think he's the sneaky one there. In midfield for Chelsea, I have Cesc Fabregas. I think it goes that way. With Conte out. If not, can move that around a little bit. In defense, Stephen Ward, who I talked about already, have paired him with the Pope, Nick Pope, for Burnley, who's done an incredible job in Tom Heaton's stead. Not saying you should question how good Heaton is, but, I mean, maybe a little bit. I mean, to have somebody else just step in and have almost identical numbers behind the same defense is interesting.
Get a new contract too, and forget what's his face's name.
Tom Hooten.
What's his name?
I also threw Matthias Jorgensen listed as Zonka in this game at 2,800, just as kind of a price dump. I went the other way of the Arsenal split in my util with Aaron Ramsey. Totally get your Iwobi call. Agree with you, as we've said. Scored for Nigeria, which put them into the World Cup, which is something neither the Netherlands or the US could do, which I'm not bitter about. But I just think it could go either way. Whoever starts on that right-hand side, I think will probably tally. It's just which one of them gets that start. So yeah, I like both of them, and they're only within 100 of each other, and I have 500 left in the kitty, so we'll basically know when we know, and then can move there. I assume you think this is going to be a pretty big score tally since we had so many matches with 3+ goals.
Yeah. We're looking for 150 plus here. I think the only thing that'll save this week is that people are going to be, like I said, the diversification of ownership across those big four teams will be, striated. So maybe you won't be able to monopolize on everybody hitting on everybody who scores. So yeah, it's probably going to be 150 plus 160 easy.
Oof, yeah. And you'll notice Rob and I both shared our kind of amalgamated teams because we think it's more interesting. Obviously, we'll both have some stack lineups as well, but not as good for a show like this.
Can't give everything away.
We can't. That'll do it for us this week. Down in that box is Rob Langevin. You can find him on Twitter at FPL_MNOP. I'm your other host, Kevin DeVries, at Kevroff on Twitter. Of course, go to VIP-bet.com and be sure to check out them on Twitter as well. Thanks to them. Thanks to you, Rob. Thanks to you guys at home for listening, and we'll catch you next week.